What if I told you the moment you stop being available is the moment everything starts shifting, not just in her behavior, but in how the world sees you? Because being too available isn't love, it's self-abandonment in disguise. And Carl Jung would call it exactly what it is, the ego's desperate plea to avoid rejection. But that desperation, it repels what you truly desire. You see, the heartbreak you're carrying, the silence you're enduring, it's not weakness, it's the forge, the pressure that, if faced consciously, can turn you into someone unshakable. When you pull back, not from bitterness, but from clarity, it's when they notice. That's when energy reverses. That's when you begin to attract rather than chase. So here's the truth in one sentence. The less you need to be chosen, the more powerful you become. Right now, you're at the edge. One path leads to more pain, overgiving, and chasing people who drain you. The other, detachment, mastery, quiet power. But you have to choose, not with words, with behavior. So if you're ready to step into the version of you who doesn't beg to be seen like this video, subscribe and comment below. I protect my energy, not my image. Number 1. The conscious withdrawal, when silence becomes power. You think they pull away because they've stopped caring. But what if your withdrawal is the mirror that reveals who they really are? The moment you stop being reactive, no longer the predictable, emotionally available counterpart in every situation, you alter the atmosphere. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." When you withdraw without fanfare, something subtle but powerful happens. People lose the script. The dynamics that once thrived on your emotional predictability begin to collapse. Imagine energy like a magnetic field. As long as you're available, responsive, and emotionally tangled, others know exactly how to engage you. But when you pull your energy back, that field breaks. The people around you, especially those who relied on your reactions for control, begin to panic. They question, they chase, or they grow resentful. This isn't because you've done something wrong, because you've taken away their unspoken power over you. What makes conscious withdrawal so powerful is that it's not an act of revenge, but a restoration of inner authority. You're not disappearing out of fear, you're stepping back to see clearly. Many who once sought your attention suddenly face their own dependence. They're no longer reacting to you, they're reacting to the vacuum you left behind. This vacuum is not emptiness, but the presence of your boundaries. That shift in dynamic exposes the emotional asymmetry that existed all along. When you were always available, you were easy to manipulate. Your predictability was their leverage, but in silence, your absence screams truths that presence never could. Jung believed that what we fail to make conscious becomes our fate. By withdrawing, you force unconscious patterns to the surface, both in yourself and in them. This is not escape, it's awareness. It's the moment you stop running toward validation and begin gravitating toward inner peace, a peace that doesn't need to be explained or defended. Now, comment below. I choose my silence, not their approval. Number 2. The hidden trap of over-availability, how emotional readiness becomes self-abandonment. Do you think being constantly available makes you more lovable? Or could it be the very reason you feel emotionally exhausted? From a young age, many of us are programmed to believe that our worth is tied to how much we give, how quickly we respond, how often we say yes when every cell in our body wants to scream no. This conditioning, often disguised as kindness or loyalty, creates what Jung might call a socially reinforced persona, a mask we wear to be accepted, even as we suffocate behind it. Over-availability is not generosity. It's a form of unconscious servitude. When your value is defined by how convenient or responsive you are to others, you cease to be a person and become an emotional tool, a button others can press to receive comfort, attention, or affirmation. And the cruelest irony, once you've served your purpose, they vanish, leaving you hollow and confused. Carl Jung described the persona as the role we play in society, a necessary mask. But when we merge with that role, when we can no longer say, "I'm tired" or "I need space," we no longer live authentically. Over time, this leads to emotional depletion, frustration, and a quiet grief that we don't fully understand. You don't just lose energy, you lose yourself. This constant readiness forms an invisible prison. You answer texts when you're broken. You agree to help when you need help. You apologize for setting boundaries. And slowly, others begin to treat your presence as a given, not a gift. Your soul becomes a vending machine. Insert need. Expect response. The true danger lies in how natural this feels, because when you've been trained to see sacrifice as love, silence and space feel selfish, but they're not. They're survival. Over-availability is not love, it's fear. The fear of not being enough if you're not constantly doing. But Jung would remind us, what is not made conscious becomes our fate. When you start choosing yourself, your rest, your time, your peace, you begin to rewrite that fate. Now, speak up in the comments. I am not a convenience. I am a soul. Number 3. Guarding your psychic energy, the invisible shield against manipulation. Have you ever felt drained after a conversation, even if it seemed harmless? That's not coincidence, it's leakage of your psychic energy. Carl Jung believed the psyche operates like an energy system. Every thought, emotion, and interaction either nourishes or depletes your internal reservoir. When you constantly explain yourself, defend your choices, or rush to please others, you're not being kind, you're hemorrhaging energy. And the more you give it away mindlessly, the easier you are to manipulate. Let's be clear. Psychic energy isn't some mystical force. It's the fuel of your consciousness, your focus, clarity, emotional resilience. When this fuel runs low, you become reactive, vulnerable. You start to attract and tolerate people who feed off your tiredness, your confusion, your guilt. Manipulators don't need power. They just need you exhausted enough to surrender yours. Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." That same principle applies here. The energy you waste trying to meet someone else's expectations is the life force you deny yourself. But what happens when you choose restraint over reaction? When you pause before responding to provocation? When you allow silence to answer the question, you conserve energy, and suddenly, you become a mystery. Your presence holds weight because it's no longer cheaply available. This is not arrogance, it's self-respect. Begin to notice your leak points, those emotional triggers that bait you into defending, oversharing, or proving your worth. These are the places where your power slips through your fingers. When you patch those leaks, you don't become cold, you become contained, focused, dangerous in the best way. There's a quiet force in those who protect their energy. It's the reason some people walk into a room and change its temperature without saying a word. They don't need validation because their peace is already full. You don't owe your energy to anyone who hasn't earned your trust. Discipline is not detachment. It's devotion to your own vitality. Now, declare in the comments, "My energy is sacred. I guard it fiercely." Number 4. Breaking psychological control through the power of not being available. Do you believe being the good one keeps you safe from manipulation? Or is your predictability exactly what others are using against you? In Jungian psychology, projection is the unconscious act of assigning one's own suppressed traits onto another. And when you're always emotionally available, you become the canvas for these projections. You start playing roles you never chose: therapist, rescuer, emotional punching bag. It's not because you're kind, it's because you're accessible. And manipulators don't want truth, they want access. The most effective manipulation isn't loud, it's silent. It's when someone makes you feel guilty for setting boundaries, when your no feels like betrayal, when your distance is treated as a crime. This guilt becomes the leash, and your readiness to soothe their discomfort becomes the cage. But something radical happens when you stop playing along. The moment you withhold your response, not out of cruelty, but awareness, you shatter the story they've written for you. The manipulator loses control because the mirror stops reflecting. They can no longer blame you for their unease. They are left to face the emptiness they were using you to fill. Of course, they won't go quietly. Expect emotional theatrics, confusion, accusations, maybe even threats. But recognize this for what it is: exposure. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you pull back, you force others to confront their shadow, the fear, control, and insecurity they projected onto you. And in that confrontation, they either grow or retreat. This is your liberation. No longer the emotional vending machine, no longer the predictable helper. By becoming unavailable, you reclaim the narrative. You're not avoiding the relationship, you're redefining its terms. You're saying, I am no longer the reflection of your unhealed parts. And that message, it echoes louder than any spoken word. Now, comment below. I no longer play roles I didn't choose. Number 5. The Silent Warrior. How conscious silence becomes the most powerful response. Have you ever noticed how silence makes people uncomfortable? Not because you're absent, but because they can no longer control the story. Conscious silence is not passivity. It is psychological strength wrapped in stillness. Jung understood that silence isn't empty, it's a living field of transformation. It's where unconscious patterns surface, where projections dissolve, and where truth stripped of drama finally breathes. When you choose not to respond, not to explain, not to argue, you're not avoiding the moment, you're mastering it. In today's world, noise is currency. The more reactive you are, the more others feel in control. They thrive when you justify, over-explain, or defend your boundaries. But when you fall silent, not from fear, but from clarity, you dismantle the script. The manipulator loses their grip because there's no dialogue to dominate. There's just the echo of your absence. This silence is Colditz cleansing. It allows your nervous system to settle, your intuition to rise, and your boundaries to root. It becomes your sanctuary and your sword. Those who relied on your constant engagement will squirm. They'll accuse, provoke, guilt trip. But their discomfort isn't your responsibility. It's their reckoning. Carl Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." Silence is how you step into that knowing, when you no longer fear their opinion. When you stop chasing closure, you become untouchable. The battlefield of manipulation collapses because you're no longer playing. But make no mistake, this silence comes with a price. You will be misunderstood. You'll be called distant, difficult, or even arrogant. That's because you've stopped feeding the illusion. You're no longer the one who bends to keep peace. Now, you are the peace, and peace terrifies those who thrive on chaos. In the space your silence creates, you meet your true self, not the mask, not the role, but the self that needs no audience to feel real. Now, Write this in the comments. My silence speaks louder than their noise. Number 6. Individuation. The inner journey toward wholeness begins with no. Do you think becoming whole means adding more to yourself, or does it begin with shedding the parts that were never truly you? Carl Jung's concept of individuation is not about self-improvement, it's about self-reclamation. It is the sacred process of becoming who you already are beneath the conditioning, the masks, the people-pleasing scripts, and ironically, this journey doesn't begin with action. It begins with withdrawal, with becoming unavailable to everything that disconnects you from yourself. Individuation requires a rupture, a moment when the outer world loses its grip, when the applause no longer feeds you, when approval no longer guides you. It is the moment you realize that being endlessly available has made you a stranger to your own needs. You have become a persona, Jung's term for the social mask crafted to survive, not to thrive. But when you begin to say no, to step back, to choose silence over performance, something sacred unfolds. You enter what Jung called sacred isolation, a place not of loneliness, but of deep listening. Here, away from distraction, you begin to hear the quiet voice of your authentic self, the self that doesn't need to be understood, only honored. This isolation is not punishment, it is sanctuary. It's where you untangle the stories others wrote for you, where you remove the armor that once protected you, but now restricts you, where you ask, who am I, when I'm not trying to be who they want? And the answer, it doesn't come all at once. It arrives slowly, like sunlight through fog. It comes in the form of peace after saying no, in the power you feel when you don't respond to provocation, in the clarity that emerges when you stop explaining your worth. The price of individuation is steep. You may lose people, you may lose roles, but what you gain is unshakable. The ability to define your own reality. You move from reacting to shaping, from surviving to creating. As Jung taught, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but that privilege is earned through withdrawal, through boundary, through brave silence. Now, comment below, I choose to become whole, not liked. Number 7. Selective energy. How conscious withdrawal reclaims your power. Have you ever wondered why your peace disappears so quickly? It's not always stolen, it's often given away by habit. The unconscious habit of over-giving, over-explaining, and over-engaging drains your energy, not just physically, but psychologically. In Jungian terms, your psychic energy is scattered, not because life is overwhelming, but because your attention is pulled in too many directions. The real transformation begins when you become selective, not rude, not cold, but intentional. Every time you delay a response, take a breath before reacting, or walk away from a draining conversation, you're exercising emotional sovereignty. These are not small gestures. They are micro-revolutions against the chaos of unconscious engagement. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Your availability, when unmanaged, becomes your destiny and not a kind one. Selective energy isn't about avoiding others. It's about choosing where your presence holds meaning. You don't answer right away, not because you're indifferent, but because you're choosing presence over performance. You don't argue needlessly because your energy is sacred, not disposable. And here's the paradox. The more you say no, the more you are respected, not by everyone, but by the ones who matter. Scarcity increases value when your time, your voice, and your emotional presence are no longer on demand. People start to listen rather than expect. You'll be tempted to explain, to apologize, to soften your withdrawal. But true power lies in the silence that follows self-respect. The moment you stop justifying your boundaries is the moment you reclaim authority over your life. You shift from being always there to powerfully present. This emotional discipline reshapes your world. Your conversations become deeper, your rest becomes sacred, your relationships become aligned, because you no longer serve from guilty, you serve from fullness. Selective energy is not about control. It's about freedom. You are no longer the puppet of obligation. You are the author of your presence. Now, write in the comments, I invest my energy where my peace grows. Number 8. The solitude of the strong. Why real freedom often feels like loneliness. Have you ever felt isolated after setting boundaries, as if self-respect came with the cost of silence? That's not failure. That's the solitude of the strong, a sacred space Carl Jung understood deeply. This isn't the loneliness of being forgotten. It's the stillness that follows liberation, when you stop performing for connection. When you no longer mold yourself to remain liked, you stand alone, not abandoned, but awakened. At first, the silence is loud. The absence of validation can feel like rejection, but slowly, clarity emerges. You realize that what you're losing were only placeholders, relationships built on your role, not your essence. And in their place, something far more powerful appears: you. Jung called this the path of individuation, where you become whole, even if it means walking alone. The discomfort you feel isn't a sign to turn back. It's proof you're stepping out of the persona, shedding the emotional costumes you wore to stay safe. You are no longer a mirror for others' needs. You are becoming the reflection of your truth. And that truth, it's not loud. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply is. In this solitude, you begin to discover what actually nourishes you. Not attention, not approval, but alignment, peace, the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and whisper, I didn't betray myself today. Of course, some will fall away. Let them. What you're losing is not love, but dependence, emotional bargaining disguised as intimacy. In their absence, you will find people who respect your space, not resent it, who love your no as much as your yes, who see your silence not as distance, but as depth. This kind of solitude is not the end of connection, it's the beginning of sacred ones, relationships that honor your boundaries, not exploit them, where your stillness is not feared, but felt. So yes, you will be misunderstood, but you will also be whole. And wholeness, unlike approval, never demands you shrink to fit. Now, comment below, I embrace the solitude that sets me free. Number 9. The final choice: claim yourself. Protect your peace and light the path for others. Are you willing to be misunderstood in order to be free? This is where the journey turns inward and outward at once. The path of conscious withdrawal, emotional boundaries, and psychic discipline isn't just for your own healing. It becomes a quiet revolution, one that starts with a single choice: to choose yourself, without apology. Carl Jung taught that transformation doesn't come through imitation. It comes through confrontation with the self. So ask yourself honestly, are you ready to face the silence that follows self-respect? Are you ready to walk away from roles that never belonged to you? Are you ready to lose those who only loved your compliance? Choosing yourself isn't an act of defiance, it's an act of remembering. You were never meant to be endlessly available, emotionally exposed, or spiritually drained. You were meant to be whole, and that wholeness begins when you say, no more. No more explaining, no more guilt, no more shrinking. But this isn't just about you. When you protect your peace, you become an example. When you speak less and feel more, You become a mirror. Others will see your clarity and begin to question their own chaos. You don't need to shout. You don't need to preach. Your silence, your boundaries, your stillness, they say everything. Now is the time to share the message, not to force others into change, but to let them witness it. Post the words, "I choose my peace," not because it's trendy, but because it's truth. A declaration that your energy is no longer up for negotiation, that your presence is no longer available on demand. Invite others into this awareness. Recommend the teachings, share the tools, direct them to the deeper workbooks, mentors, reflections, like Jung's exploration in Beyond the Shadow, which reveals how the unconscious shapes our fate until we confront it. Because this is bigger than one choice. It's a movement, a collective awakening, a soft rebellion against emotional manipulation, chaos, and the cult of overexposure. You are not alone, and by choosing yourself, you light the way for others to do the same. Now, comment below, "I choose my peace and I protect it." You started thinking distance was loss, but now you see it was rebirth. You didn't disappear because you were weak. You disappeared because your energy deserved protection. And in that silence, something powerful emerged. You, the man who's no longer available for games, for breadcrumbs, for attention dressed up as love. The man who values his peace over their validation. The one who, by stepping back, reminded the world and himself what true worth looks like. She didn't lose you because you changed. She lost you because you finally saw through the illusion. So if this message hits home, like this video, subscribe for more, and comment below, "I don't chase, I choose." Remember this, you teach people how to treat you by what you stop accepting.